Hi, I'm 26F, and if there's one thing my family is consistent about, it's forgetting my birthday. For as long as I can remember, birthdays in our household have always been chaotic. It's not that we didn't celebrate them at all. My younger brother, for example, has had over-the-top parties with custom cakes and professional decorations. But for me, it's like my birthday was a date that slipped off their calendar entirely. Growing up, my family always had a reason why my birthday was overlooked. We're too busy, they'd say. Or we don't have the budget right now. That excuse didn't hold much weight when they managed to throw elaborate celebrations for my siblings. My brother's 10th birthday, for instance, had a bouncy castle, a magician, and catered food. For mine that year, my aunt picked up a cupcake on her way over, slapped a candle on it, and called it a day. That cupcake was one of the better celebrations I remember. In the rare moments I brought this up, my parents always had some excuse. Either they were swamped with work, or there was some last-minute family crisis. Once my dad said, "You're not one of those people who makes a big deal out of birthdays, are you?" Like celebrating the day you were born was some ridiculous indulgence. But somehow, they never missed the mark when it came to my siblings. My younger brother had a sweet 16 party that people still talk about, and my older sister's graduation party felt like a mini wedding. By the time I was in my teens, I stopped expecting anything. My 18th birthday came and went without so much as a card. My 21st, they were too busy with work, but my dad managed to take my brother out for his big soccer game that same evening. The final straw came last year. I'd made it very clear multiple times that my 25th birthday was coming up. I dropped hints. I outright reminded them. My mom even said, "Don't worry, we won't forget this time." I actually believed her. But on the day of my birthday, the house was silent. No texts, no calls, not even a casual happy birthday. I sat at home that night, scrolling through social media, pretending I didn't care. Exactly a week later, they threw my brother a birthday party. Not just any party, it was a full-blown event with a 3-tier custom cake, professional photography, and a catered dinner. I showed up, smiled, and left early, choking down how invisible I felt. When I brought it up afterward, the responses ranged from dismissive to downright insulting. My mom said, "We didn't mean to forget. It's been a stressful time." My dad chimed in with, "You're an adult now. Birthdays aren't that big of a deal?" My brother? He laughed and said, "Well, maybe next year." I decided right then that I was done. Done waiting for my family to care, done trying to convince them my birthday mattered. If they didn't think I was worth celebrating, I'd celebrate myself. That's when the idea came to me. Instead of sulking, I'd throw myself the kind of birthday party I'd always dreamed of. But here's the catch. They weren't invited. No parents, no siblings, no extended family. Just my friends, coworkers, and the people who've actually shown up for me over the years. I started planning that night. I knew this would take time, effort, and money, but I didn't care. For once, I wanted to feel like my birthday mattered. I found a trendy venue downtown that could handle everything from catering to decorations. I spent hours scrolling Pinterest for themes until I landed on one that felt perfect, a masquerade ball. It would be elegant, extravagant, and completely mine. My first order of business was the guest list. I kept it tight, just the people who'd been there for me through thick and thin, no family. I didn't want to give them the chance to ruin it. I didn't post anything on the family group chat, or even drop hints around the house. As far as they were concerned, my life was business as usual. As I finalized plans, I started to feel a mix of excitement and dread. I knew they'd find out eventually, and the fallout would be massive. But the more I thought about it, the more I realized it didn't matter. For the first time, this wasn't about them. It was about me. By the time I booked the DJ, chose the caterer, and ordered the cake a ridiculously fancy custom design that screamed me, I felt like I was finally taking control. This wasn't just a birthday party, it was a statement. I know some people might think I'm being petty, but after years of being an afterthought, I think I've earned this. My family has always accused me of being too dramatic or too sensitive, but this time I wasn't asking for their validation. If they couldn't be bothered to celebrate me, I'd do it myself. The party is still months away, but everything is falling into place. I've kept everything off social media for now, but I know the secrecy won't last. They're bound to find out, and when they do, it's going to be a mess. But honestly, I'm ready for it. This year, it's about me for a change. The first thing I locked down was the venue. I found this beautiful loft space downtown with high ceilings, exposed brick walls, and huge windows overlooking the city skyline. It was modern but had this cozy vibe that I knew would be perfect for the party. They offered catering, a DJ, and even custom lighting options, so it felt like a one-stop shop. The moment I signed the contract, it started to feel real. I picked a masquerade ball theme, something extravagant but also mysterious and fun. I wanted it to be different from the cookie-cutter parties my family always threw, and this felt just right. Planning quickly became a group effort. My best friends were all in. One offered to handle the playlist while another knew someone who could hook us up with discounted party favors. We brainstormed decoration ideas, from table centerpieces to custom masks for guests. A friend even offered to help make a photo backdrop with fairy lights and velvet curtains. It felt like a project we were all invested in, and their excitement kept me motivated. While all this was happening, I started dropping vague hints on social media. Nothing specific, just enough to stir curiosity. Posts like "something big is coming," or "save the date for a special night." Started getting comments and DMs from friends who wanted to know more. The next big thing was my outfit. I'd never splurged on clothes before, but this time I decided to go all out. I visited a boutique I'd only ever window shopped at before and found a stunning floor-length dress that fit the theme perfectly. It was deep emerald green with intricate beadwork, the kind of dress that made you feel like royalty the second you put it on. I also bought matching heels and earrings, telling myself it was worth it, since this party was a once-in-a-lifetime event. Meanwhile, I kept all the planning completely off the family group chat. They had no idea what I was up to, which was exactly how I wanted it. The cake was another highlight. I reached out to a bakery known for their over-the-top custom designs, I gave them a sketch of what I wanted, a three-tiered masterpiece with a masquerade theme. The bottom layer would have intricate mask designs in gold and black, the middle would feature edible lace, and the top would have a sugar sculpture of a mask. It was definitely expensive, but I couldn't resist. The only hiccup was when the bakery called to say their decorator was sick, and they might need to adjust the design. I scrambled to find another bakery as a backup, but thankfully they managed to pull through. About 3 weeks into planning, I hit my first major setback. The venue canceled. Apparently they'd double booked and given the priority to a corporate event. I panicked for about an hour before diving back into research. Luckily, I found another spot, a rooftop terrace that overlooked the same skyline. It wasn't exactly what I'd envisioned, but it was gorgeous in its own way. The owner even threw in some extras like string lights and heaters since it would be a chilly evening. With that crisis averted, I focused on the guest list. Initially, I'd planned for about 30 people, but word started spreading. Friends were asking if they could bring plus ones, and a couple of coworkers hinted they'd love to come. Before I knew it, the list had grown to 50. I wasn't thrilled about the extra cost, but I couldn't say no. The more the merrier, right? I ordered personalized invitations with a wax seal and mailed them out. Everything was starting to come together. As the details came together, my family started noticing I was busier than usual. My mom mentioned that I hadn't been visiting as often, and my dad asked why I seemed distracted. I dodged their questions, saying I had a lot going on at work. My mom tried the guilt route, saying she missed having the whole family together and that I should make more of an effort to come around. I let her comments roll off my back and kept my focus on the party. My younger brother, though, was more persistent. He started hovering whenever I was on my laptop or checking my phone, asking what I was up to. I caught him trying to peek at my messages once, but I shut that down quickly. It felt like he suspected something, but without any details, he couldn't connect the dots. By this point, I'd already spent more than I'd budgeted, but I kept telling myself it was worth it. I added party favors, custom masks, and mini bottles of champagne, and hired a professional photographer to document the night. Every time an RSVP came in, I felt a little more justified in my decision to leave my family out of it. These were the people who cared about me, who wanted to celebrate with me. That was all that mattered. As the weeks passed, the excitement kept building. My friends would text me every day, asking about updates and sharing their own plans for the party. It was starting to feel bigger than I'd ever imagined, and for the first time in years, I felt like my birthday would finally be something worth remembering. It all started with a single tag. A friend posted an Instagram story while helping me finalize decorations and accidentally tagged me. I didn't even notice until the next morning, when my phone was blowing up with notifications. Buried between the congratulatory messages from friends were a few texts from my younger brother, asking what I was planning and why he wasn't invited. I ignored him at first, hoping he'd drop it, but by lunchtime, he was calling repeatedly. I finally picked up, and he wasted no time demanding answers. He'd seen the Instagram story and figured out that I was throwing a big event. His tone quickly shifted from curiosity to indignation when I told him it was a private party for friends, not family. He insisted that I explain why the family wasn't invited, but I stayed calm, repeating that it wasn't about them. Before hanging up, he warned me, "Mom and Dad aren't going to like this." By the end of the day, my parents were involved. They called me back to back, leaving voicemails that grew angrier with each one. When I finally answered, my mom immediately launched into a tirade about how disrespectful it was to exclude the family from a milestone event. My dad chimed in, accusing me of being ungrateful and saying I was making them look bad. They demanded to know why they weren't on the guest list. I calmly reminded them of all the birthdays they'd forgotten over the years. I told them about the 1 cupcake parties my aunt threw, about the countless times they celebrated my siblings while ignoring me, and how they completely missed my 25th birthday after I'd reminded them several times. Their reaction? Gaslighting. My mom claimed I was blowing things out of proportion and rewriting history. My dad said they'd always done their best, even though their best apparently didn't include remembering my birthday. I ended the call before it escalated further. The fallout didn't stop there. My cousin texted me later that night, saying my mom had called her to vent. She said my parents were heartbroken and confused, painting themselves as victims in the situation. The cousin tried to mediate, asking me to reconsider and let the family come. I thanked her for her concern but made it clear that my decision was final. Meanwhile, my friends were incredible. When I told them about the calls and texts, they reassured me that I had every right to set boundaries. One friend even sent me a voice note reminding me of all the times my family let me down, saying, "This party is for you. Don't let them ruin it." Hearing that gave me the strength to hold my ground. Things escalated further when my parents sent me an email. It was long, guilt-ridden, and full of phrases like tearing the family apart, and how could you do this to us? They even hinted that they might show up uninvited, which felt more like a threat than an offer. I replied with a short, unemotional email, saying I wouldn't change my plans and that showing up uninvited would only cause unnecessary drama. A day later, my brother took things public. He posted a long rant on Facebook, accusing me of being selfish and attention-seeking. He wrote that I was putting friends before family and embarrassing our parents. Mutual acquaintances started chiming in, some siding with him, while others defended me. I didn't want to engage, so I blocked him and my parents on social media altogether. It felt drastic, but I needed to protect my peace. Amidst the chaos, I got a surprise that completely lifted my spirits. An old mentor from college RSVP'd to the party. She'd been a huge influence on me during a difficult time in my life, and hearing that she wanted to come meant the world to me. Her message was full of excitement, and it reminded me of why I was doing this in the first place, to celebrate with people who genuinely cared about me. Despite my family's constant guilt-tripping, I felt more confident than ever in my decision. My parents tried one last tactic, sending another email framed as an apology but filled with backhanded comments. They wrote about how families always have ups and downs, and that it was my responsibility to keep us together. I didn't take the bait. My reply was brief. Thank you for your email. My decision remains the same. With just a week to go, the party was all I could think about. RSVPs were finalized, decorations were ready, and my friends were just as excited as I was. I felt a mix of nervousness and exhilaration. My family's reaction was a mess, but their absence at this party wasn't just a choice, it was a statement. For the first time, I was putting myself first. This year, my birthday was truly about me. The night of the party finally arrived. The venue was everything I'd hoped it would be, and more. The rooftop terrace was transformed into a dazzling masquerade ball. String lights crisscrossed above, casting a soft glow over the city skyline. Tables were draped in deep emerald and gold, with centerpieces of feathers and candles that fit the theme perfectly. Guests began arriving around 7 p.m., dressed in formal attire and wearing their custom masks. Some of my friends had gone all out with their outfits, adding to the atmosphere. The moment people stepped in, their reactions made all the effort worth it. Everyone was taking photos, complimenting the setup, and saying how much they'd been looking forward to the night. By 8 p.m., the venue was buzzing with energy. The DJ played upbeat music as more guests arrived. I had hired a photographer who floated around capturing candid shots of everyone laughing, mingling, and admiring the decor. It felt surreal seeing so many people, all here to celebrate with me. One of my friends handed me a glass of champagne and jokingly reminded me to give a speech. I kept it short but heartfelt, thanking everyone for coming and saying how much it meant to me. For the first time, I felt truly celebrated. As the night unfolded, my friends surprised me with something I hadn't planned, a live band. A close friend had secretly arranged it as a gift, and they started playing just after my speech. Everyone gathered around to watch, cheering and clapping to the music. The band's energy was infectious, and soon people were dancing. Even I couldn't resist joining in. It was one of those moments that felt straight out of a movie, where everything just clicks. Then came the cake. When the servers wheeled it out, there were audible gasps. The three-tiered masterpiece looked even better than I'd imagined. The intricate gold and black mask designs, edible lace, and sugar sculpture at the top were stunning. Everyone crowded around, snapping photos as I cut the first slice. A friend jokingly tried to help by pretending to steal the top tier, and we all burst out laughing. It was a small moment, but it felt so genuine and full of joy. The high point of the night quickly turned chaotic. Around 9:30 p.m., one of the security guards I'd hired approached me with a serious expression. My parents and younger brother had shown up at the entrance, demanding to be let in. They claimed they were family and had a right to be there. The guard stuck to the instructions I'd given him. No family was allowed in without my approval, and came to check with me. I told him to politely but firmly deny them entry. Minutes later, I could hear the commotion from outside. My mom was yelling, accusing me of being ungrateful and cruel. My dad joined in, saying I was ruining the family's reputation. My brother, not to be outdone, shouted that I was selfish for excluding them. Guests inside started noticing the noise, and a few peeked out to see what was going on. I stayed calm and told the security team to handle it. They eventually called the building's management, who threatened to involve the police if my family didn't leave. Reluctantly, they stormed off, but not before my mom yelled, "You'll regret this." Afterward, a few friends came up to check on me. One joked that I should get an award for the most dramatic family drama of the year, which made me laugh. Another friend gave me a hug and said, "This just proves you made the right decision." Hearing that helped me shake off the awkwardness and refocus on the party. The DJ turned the music up, and the energy in the room picked right back up. The rest of the night was everything I'd hoped it would be. We had an epic photo shoot with the skyline in the background. The photographer captured stunning moments, friends laughing, dancing, and enjoying themselves. I even got a few solo shots in my dress, which made me feel like a celebrity. By the time the dance floor really got going, I'd completely forgotten about the drama outside. Everyone was having such a good time, and the mood was contagious. As the party wound down, people started handing me gifts. A close friend gave me a scrapbook filled with photos and memories from over the years, and it brought tears to my eyes. Another friend gifted me a custom journal with a quote about self-love on the cover. Every gift felt thoughtful and personal, reminding me how much these people cared about me. By midnight, the venue started to empty out. Guests hugged me goodbye, telling me how amazing the party had been and how much they'd enjoyed themselves. Standing on the terrace, looking out at the city lights, I felt an overwhelming sense of peace. For the first time, my birthday wasn't overshadowed by disappointment. I know the fallout from my family is far from over. They're not the type to let this go quietly, and I'm bracing myself for the aftermath. But for now, all I can focus on is how much love and support I have from the people who truly matter. This night wasn't just a celebration of my birthday, it was a reminder that I'm surrounded by people who actually care about me. The morning after the party, my phone blew up again, but this time it wasn't just friends. Photos and videos from the event had started circulating on social media. Friends tagged me in posts with captions like "Best Party of the Year" and "So much fun at the masquerade bash." While most of the comments were positive, a few mutual acquaintances asked why my family wasn't there. I knew this was going to get back to my parents, and it didn't take long. By midday, my inbox was flooded with angry texts and voicemails. My mom accused me of humiliating the family by having such an extravagant party without them. My dad demanded to know how I could exclude them after everything they've done for me. They painted themselves as victims, making it seem like I'd deliberately set out to embarrass them. I didn't respond. I knew there was no point in arguing with people who refused to take accountability for years of neglect. By the afternoon, things escalated when my younger brother made a lengthy post on Facebook. In it, he called me selfish and accused me of tearing the family apart. He wrote about how hurt my parents were, framing them as innocent victims of my supposed vendetta. A few family members commented, offering their support to him and echoing his sentiments. However, what surprised me was the number of friends who jumped to my defense. One friend pointed out how my family had consistently overlooked my birthdays for years. Another reminded my brother that just last year, they threw him a huge party while completely forgetting mine. The comments section turned into a heated debate, with more and more people calling out my family's hypocrisy. Eventually, my brother deleted the post, but not before the damage was done. My parents, likely feeling cornered, switched tactics. That evening, they sent a long email filled with guilt-laden language. They talked about how hurt your father is and how they can't believe you'd cut us out like this. They painted themselves as victims, conveniently ignoring all the times they'd made me feel invisible. They also demanded a sit-down meeting to resolve this, adding that if I refused, they might reconsider supporting me financially or emotionally in the future. I replied with a short, unemotional response, stating that I wasn't interested in mending a relationship built on manipulation and guilt. I made it clear that I wouldn't be attending any meetings and that my boundaries were non-negotiable. As word of the fallout spread, a few members of my extended family reached out. My aunt sent me a message, scolding me for hurting my parents and suggesting I apologize to keep the peace. A couple of cousins messaged me with a mix of support and confusion, trying to piece together what had happened. What stood out the most was a message from a cousin I hadn't spoken to in years. She admitted she'd felt similarly neglected by my parents and siblings growing up and applauded me for standing up for myself. Her words were a small but powerful reminder that I wasn't alone in this. The situation escalated again when my photographer posted the official photos from the party. The pictures were stunning. The elegant decor, the joyful moments on the dance floor, the epic cake cutting. Friends and colleagues left comments about how amazing the night looked, while my family grew more enraged. My mom texted me screenshots of the photos, accusing me of rubbing it in their faces. She claimed I'd gone out of my way to flaunt the party online, completely ignoring the fact that it was my friends who shared everything. Despite the backlash, I had no regrets. The party was everything I'd dreamed of, and for once, I felt truly celebrated. Every ounce of effort and every penny spent had been worth it. The final straw came when I heard about a family gathering my parents had hosted. They'd invited several relatives and used the opportunity to explain the situation, painting me as ungrateful and attention-seeking. I started getting messages from relatives who hadn't been there, repeating the same narrative my parents had spun. Some scolded me, while others wanted to hear my side of the story. I decided not to engage. I realized that the more I tried to explain myself, the more fuel I'd give them for their pity party. Instead, I focused on the positives. My friends continued to show unwavering support, sharing stories of how they'd seen my family treat me poorly over the years. Hearing their perspectives validated my decision to set boundaries. Even at work, colleagues who'd attended the party expressed how much fun they'd had, telling me I deserved every bit of it. Eventually, I decided to block out the family drama entirely. I muted group chats, ignored emails, and focused on my own life. I threw myself into work and hobbies, spending time with people who genuinely cared about me. For the first time in years, I felt a sense of peace. My family might never understand why I made the choices I did, but I realized it wasn't my job to make them see. This was my life, and for once I was living it on my terms. About a week after the party, my younger brother called me. At first, I assumed it was just another attempt to guilt-trip me, but his tone was surprisingly calm. He claimed he wanted to apologize for the misunderstanding and said he regretted how things had escalated. It felt off, but I let him talk. After a few minutes, it became clear that he wasn't apologizing, he was fishing for information. He kept steering the conversation toward future family events, asking if I was planning to attend or host anything. When I didn't give him the answers he wanted, he got defensive and slipped up. He let it slip that my parents had been telling relatives I was mentally unstable and acting out to justify my behavior. They were spreading lies to make themselves look better and me look unreasonable. I ended the call before it turned into a full-blown argument, but hearing that confirmed what I'd suspected all along. They cared more about their reputation than our relationship. Later that evening, I was reorganizing my closet when I stumbled across an old diary from my teenage years. Flipping through the pages, I found entries about past birthdays, ones my parents had completely forgotten, even after I reminded them. One entry stood out. I'd written about a birthday where I'd stayed up late, waiting for someone to acknowledge the day, only to go to bed feeling invisible. Reading those words brought back memories I'd buried. It wasn't just about the birthdays they missed, it was the consistent pattern of neglect and favoritism that had left its mark on me. I mentioned the diary to a close friend the next day, and they suggested an idea I hadn't considered. They said I should write a letter to my parents, not to send, but to process my emotions. They thought it might help me untangle years of frustration and hurt. That night, I sat down and poured everything out onto paper. The forgotten birthdays, the excuses, the favoritism, and how their behavior made me feel like an afterthought in my own family. Writing it all out felt cathartic, even if I had no intention of sharing it with them. A few days later, my parents showed up unannounced at my apartment. I wasn't surprised. They'd threatened a face-to-face conversation in their emails, but I wasn't prepared for how aggressive they were. The moment I opened the door, my mom started accusing me of tearing the family apart, while my dad stood behind her, shaking his head in disapproval. They demanded to know why I was shutting them out and insisted that I was being unfair. I let them talk for a while, but when it became clear they weren't interested in hearing my perspective, I calmly told them I wouldn't tolerate guilt-tripping or manipulation anymore. That set them off. My mom became emotional, accusing me of being ungrateful and cruel. My dad started listing all the things they'd done for me over the years, as if that erased the neglect and favoritism. Eventually, I told them the conversation was over and asked them to leave. They tried to argue, but I stood my ground. For the first time, I felt like I was in control of the situation. When they realized I wasn't backing down, they left, but not without a dramatic exit. My mom yelled as they walked to the car, promising I'd regret this decision. A few days after their visit, a supportive cousin reached out with some unexpected news. Apparently, my parents' smear campaign had backfired. One of the relatives they'd confided in started questioning their version of events and reached out to my cousin, who told them the truth. Word spread quickly, and soon, other family members were messaging me to apologize for believing my parents' lies. Meanwhile, my parents tried to distract from the fallout by throwing a lavish party for my younger brother. It was over the top, complete with a catered dinner and professional decorations, exactly the kind of event they'd never bothered to organize for me. Friends and relatives sent me photos and videos of the event, almost as if to prove my point. I didn't engage. If anything, it was just more proof of the favoritism that had defined our family dynamic for years. Encouraged by the success of my own party, I started thinking about future celebrations. A friend suggested throwing a Friendsgiving later in the year, and I loved the idea. It felt freeing to plan events with people who genuinely cared about me, without the added stress of family drama. I even started looking into venues for my next milestone birthday, determined to make it even more special than the last. Over time, mutual friends and extended family began piecing together the full story. Many reached out to offer their support, saying they admired my decision to set boundaries. Even colleagues who'd attended the party told me how much they respected me for standing up for myself. It was a strange but satisfying feeling to know that people were finally seeing the truth. Looking back, I don't regret a single decision. The party, the boundaries, and even the fallout, it all led me to a place of peace I hadn't felt in years. My family may never fully understand why I did what I did, and that's okay. For the first time, I'm surrounded by people who truly value me, and that's more than enough.